Up, guys? Yes, this is the Dominate Premed Show. Dr. Pinesett. We are back at it. What is up? Let's talk about it. The greatest med school in all of the land, and I may be biased, but Stanford is now offering a huge financial initiative to help with the cost of medical school debt and making their tuition and their living low cost, right? And practically free for most of their students. And there's some details we should talk about. And also, I thought it'd be important to talk about kind of the larger schema of why it's important that schools make tuition more affordable and some intricacies of how different policies are laid out and some things you guys should think about as students. So let's go, guys. But stop making excuses, stop whining, stop, right? Get at it. No excuses, just dominate. All right, guys. Dr. Pinesett here, Dominate Premed Show, and today we're talking about my alma mater, Stanford, with a huge announcement with an attempt to reduce student loan debt. Let's talk about the details. I'm Dr. Andre Pinesett, I'm the study doc. This is the Dominate Premed Show. My website is studenttransformation.com. I see Martin, it's your first time joining us live. The Dominate Premed Show is filmed live on YouTube. It's available on any podcast platform you want to listen to, so you can get your dose of Dr. Pinesett anytime you want at your convenience. So make sure you guys get onto the podcast, subscribe, give me a nice little review, let me guys know. Let me know that you guys are liking what's going on. Yes, and the Student Transformation Program is lit. So here we go. Let's talk about the details of what Stanford just announced. Stanford received a $55 million donation by a man named John Arriaga. And when I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, John Arriaga, that sounds very familiar to me. Well, because John Arriaga is this huge real estate tycoon. He's a Stanford alumnus, but he's donated tons of money to Stanford in the past. And his name, it's the Arriaga Athletic Center at Stanford. So I was like, oh, that makes sense now. I remember why I remember that name. So he donated $55 million. And as part of his donation, Stanford will be getting matching funds from various other sources and within the medical school. And so will be the total value of this gift to over $90 million allocated to help make Stanford Medical School more affordable for students. What's amazing is even without this gift, Stanford actually leads the nation. It's one of the lowest, if not the lowest. I don't want to say the lowest because I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it is the lowest medical school debt burden in terms of its graduates of any school in the country, and it's $89,000, which sounds like a lot of money, but when you look at the average medical student graduating with almost $200,000 worth of medical school debt, that is a crazy amount of debt. And so it's great that they're attempting to reduce this. This funding is earmarked for students with financial need and will cover both tuition and also, even more importantly, in the expensive Bay Area. Palo Alto is no joke. I lived in subsidized on-campus housing in a 500 square foot concrete floor with that little thin, like, kind of thin fake carpet stuff. I lived in that on campus, and I had flame retardant dorm furniture, and I paid almost $2,000 a month. It was terrible. So it's very expensive in Palo Alto. So it's also awesome that not only covering tuition, but also covering living expenses. Like I said, it's earmarked for students with financial need. And I wanted to start by talking about why it's so important to reduce student debt. So what do you guys think, right? We are live on here. What is up, Junior? What is up, Liz? What is up, Victor? Tishna, what up? Robert, what up? Why is it important to attempt to reduce medical student loan debt? Why does that matter? Why is it substantial to make medical education affordable? Why does it matter? Okay, exactly. Shylon. Okay, that's you. Thank you for telling me who you are, Shylon. What up? Yes. So the number one thing is that it creates an opportunity to level the playing field in medicine. Medicine is very expensive, and I often refer to medicine as it's a career of the wealthy, in the sense that many people who are not wealthy can't afford the long path to becoming a doctor. From all the stuff you have to do in undergrad, to improving your GPA and maybe doing post-bac programs, going through medical school, still not making any money, going through residency, still not making any money, going through fellowship, all these things to finally get to the end and make money. It takes a long time. So that delayed revenue, not every student, particularly students of disadvantaged backgrounds, we can't afford to go that long without money because our families maybe are depending on it. So I think it's really great because it adds to the diversity in medicine. The other thing is that it adds to the diversity of doctors and choosing specialties, because $200,000 is a lot of money, y'all. Like, how many of you guys, if you had $200,000 of debt right now, would you be freaking out? I'm in that like super high debt club, so I know that it's crushing. It feels terrible to have lots of medical school debt. When I attended Stanford, it was the estimated cost of attendance was right around $100,000 a year. I was there for 4 years. So that's $400,000 of potential debt burden that I would accumulate. So it's very expensive. So I still graduated with quite a bit of loans, but having lots of debt, like all things, right? It makes you an at-risk person, and it makes you make decisions not based on your heart, not based on what you want to do, not based on what you thought you would do, but makes you make decisions based on money. And I say, and you guys probably heard me say this, that money is absolutely important. You should always think about money, but it shouldn't be something that makes you go against every one of your other principles to get. You should never sacrifice what you believe in and what you want to do with your life for money. Can we all agree on that? And so by having reduced tuition, you see people who are now not scared to worry about how I'm going to pay back my loans if I go into primary care, if I go to a certain area, right? And these different aspects, if I stay in academics. And the academics part is a big thing. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but the amount of physician scientists has gone down and been going down every single year, because people aren't going to be academicians, is what they call it, right? Physician scientists, because they recognize to be a physician scientist, they're going to make less than their sole physician counterparts. And as a result, they're going to have a more difficult time getting out of that debt and feeling good about what they're making, right? So you see less of that. Beyond the physician scientist, you see less academic physicians, because in academics, you get paid less. I myself, I'm a faculty member at UCSD, right? So I'm a clinical instructor at UCSD. I work with UCSD residents, UCSD medical students in the operating rooms doing anesthesia. And compared to a private practice anesthesia job, my academic anesthesia job, I take about a 30 to 40% pay cut from what I would make if I was a private practice physician compared to what I make in academics. And so you have to really love academics and love to teach in order to take that big of a pay cut. And so by reducing student loan burden, we can then have the option, you'll have seen more students who aren't scared to go into academics, to give away 40% salary, whatever it might be. So it's awesome. So it's really great from like all perspectives to help medicine. As a lot of schools, you guys have seen this, right? More and more schools are coming up with initiatives to reduce student debt, whether it be completely free tuition, partial tuition, new programs, etc. There's a lot coming out. So I thought as part of this video, what I would also do is let's talk about what you guys, as people who are applying, or right, it's March right now, people who are, maybe you have some acceptances and you're trying to decide what to do. I thought it'd be really cool to talk about financial considerations for when you're looking at, okay, wait, they're saying they're going to offer me great financial aid. What should I actually be looking for? And what are some of the nuances of these programs? Does that sound good? Everyone want to talk about that? So the first thing is that you guys need to look at, you guys need to think about when you're looking at, yes, MB, you are live. This is wild. Live action, MB, what up? The first thing you should look at is the criteria for the money. If you look at a place like NYU, it's for all their students. If you look at a place like Kaiser, it's all their students. You look at a place like Stanford, and what they just did with their initiative, it is for financially needy students. You look at Wash U in St. Louis, it's for financially needy students, right? And you look at Harvard and a lot of the Ivy Leagues, it's for financially needy students. And then there's some schools that have mixed pools, et cetera, right? So there's a big difference between financially needy students and all students. And I say this for you guys to think about. Because if you are a financially needy student, it would be smarter to go to a program that allocates those dollars towards the financially needy as opposed to across all students. And I say that because, and I actually commend uh, Stanford for making it a financial need-based program, because that's the only way to actually level the playing field. In the sense that if you look at what happened at NYU, you look at what happened with Kaiser, right, which all their students get this financial aid. What happened to the number of applicants to NYU and to Kaiser? What happened immediately when they announced, hey guys, we got free tuition for everybody? What happened to the number of applicants that went to these two schools? Let's hear it. What do you guys think? What happened to their applicant pool? More applicants, less applicants? What happened? Right? Victor said it. It increased. When they announced free tuition for all, the number of applications increased, including from the top medical students, including from the financially wealthy students who apply to these schools. If you look at the statistics of students who matriculate to NYU from after the change to before the change, do you think the statistics, right? So look at the NYU acceptance statistics, right? Their average GPA, their average MCAT for matriculants. Did the MCAT and the GPA go up, stay the same, or go down? What do we think? Right? So my hair just put it in the box. Way, way up. GPA goes up, MCAT goes up, med school rank goes up. What do we know about the data and how GPA and MCAT correlate across disadvantaged and diversity students? That disadvantaged students and diversity students tend to have lower numbers. So what this tells you is that when NYU announced free tuition for all, they didn't diversify their class. What they did was elevate the eliteness of their class. And so when you have all tuition covered, you're going to get not the diversity you necessarily want, and maybe that's what they weren't aiming for, I don't know, but what you're going to get is a lot of privileged students applying and getting in, and you're not going to be increasing diversity the same. So I really like that some programs have said, listen, we're going to make it for the financially needy, because then we're not incentivizing those who don't need the finances to apply. We're incentivizing those who need the finances to apply and increase diversity. And you see this in Stanford's change, which went into effect last year, but you see that Stanford actually has their most diverse class almost ever this past year. And it rose by almost 5% in the number of diversity candidates, traditionally underrepresented students in their class. And this is a reflection of this change. And like I said, Stanford has always had a really low percentage of student debt. Part of that is because they have lots of wealthy students. The other part of that is that they're very creative with how they manage finances for their students. I'm actually going to do a whole breakdown about it because it's actually really brilliant in terms of thinking about how you can finagle money out of your medical school. Stanford actually facilitates their medical students taking advantage of the system and getting money from the school, which is amazing. But there's ways for you guys to do that in different ways. So we'll talk about that on another episode. But you must look at the criteria for selection, because if you're not a financially diverse, right, a financially disadvantaged, student, you're not going to qualify at Stanford. So you want to apply to Kaiser or NYU, whatever. The other thing I'll say is once we establish that you meet the criteria for a school and they may be giving you some money, the second thing we have to look at is what is the breakdown of that money? Is it just tuition? Is it tuition and books? Is it tuition and books and living? Three entirely different things. Why is that different? Because if you go to a school like Stanford, about half of your cost of attendance is actually a living expense because the area is so expensive. If you go to a school like UCLA in LA, right, you're going to be paying a lot of money to live in LA. If you go to a school like Washington University in St. Louis, right, it's a lower cost of living, and so you don't necessarily need the living as much. So if you're going to a school in a more expensive area, you want to see, are they also covering my living expenses? Because the tuition may be a drop in the bucket compared to what the living also is. So you want to make sure what exactly are they covering and does that meet my need? So what's the distribution? Tuition, tuition plus living and books. What is the breakdown? In the case of Stanford, it's tuition and living, which is awesome. come because it's expensive to live in Stanford and Palo Alto, and so you get all that covered. So you want to make sure that when they say, oh yeah, we're going to cover all your expenses. Well, wait a minute. What expenses? My tuition? My books? My living? What are you giving me? So ask them about that. The other thing you want to ask is, in addition to the hard fees, you want to ask if there is a stipend for you to live on. So some schools have structured their plans where they not only give you money for your tuition, money for your housing expenses, but they also give you a living stipend, similar to how MSTP operates, right? So these MD, PhD people, they get tuition, they get living for their housing, and they also get a stipend to actually live, to eat, to have fun, to get around, money, whatever they can spend it, however they want. So it's also great is that the program you're applying to has that folded in, because don't we all want to have some fun, some entertainment, right? So look at that. The next thing to look at is, what is the length of the financial aid? Some of you guys have experienced this, my people who are already in medical school or people who are applying and you're looking at different financial aid packages. If you look at the fine print, not all financial aid offers are the same, in the sense that some will offer you this huge amount of financial aid, but it will be for 1 year. And this is what UCLA used to get in trouble for. I went to UCLA for grad school, so I can poo-poo on them a little bit. That's why I choose schools that I've been to, so that way people can't say I'm biased. UCLA used to get in trouble because they would offer a huge amount of financial aid, and people are like, yes, I'll never have to pay anything for medical school. But in the fine print, that financial aid was only good for 1 year. Must be renewed, must be reapplied for. Only good for 2 years, must be renewed, must be applied for, or ineligible to be renewed. And so you would go there thinking, oh my gosh, everything's covered. And then year 2 comes around, you get a bill, and you're like, what the heck's going on? And they're like, oh no, that financial aid was only good for 1 year. And you're like, what? So look at the fine print of what is the length of this financial aid. The other thing is looking at repayment options outside of the bulk free tuition. So when you go to a school, that's why I mentioned about Stanford being very clever with things, is that when you go to a school, beyond just the financial aid stuff of say, hey, listen, we'll give you this money unattached, many of these schools that have really nice endowments, they also have a bank of funds to allow their students to take out loans or grants directly from the medical school or the university. So at Stanford, they have their own loan center where you can take out Stanford loans with favorable terms at lower interest. This is also part of this kind of like secret thing, is that Stanford, all those loans don't exactly count into their national debt burden. We can talk about another day, but so you want to look at other options to supplement and find cheaper options to get your loans than Sally Mae, who's terrible and is always trying to jack up your interest rate, right? So look at what schools offer in terms of creative financing to help you meet your need, and look at the terms of it. When do I have to repay it? How much of it do I have to repay? How fast? At what percent? Does the percent change, right? Is it subsidized loan? Is it unsubsidized while I'm in school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, looking at the different programs. So I encourage you guys to explore and look at all these things, and it really makes a difference as all this stuff happens. At the same time, I think it's very important to note, very, very important to note, people come out and say that all medical school tuition should be free. I agree with this wholeheartedly. It's like saying, hey, we should have universal health care. Everyone should be able to go to the doctor. I actually got into a discussion with this with another physician the other day, and I just was flabbergasted because they were like, man, it's ridiculous. People don't want universal health care. You know, people just need to make better decisions with their money. I'm like, better decisions with their money? I said, you have people out here who are diabetic and cannot afford their insulin. What does that do to the decision? Well, they got an iWatch, an Apple phone. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, do you know how expensive insulin is? Like, so I think it's a travesty that we don't have universal health care. Beyond that, what I say is right, like we should all have access to the healthcare we need. We also be able to get help from a doctor when we need it. We should also be able to go to medical school without saying, ooh, I'm smart enough, I'm hardworking enough, I'm dedicated enough, I love people, I want to be a doctor. Bad enough, but I can't afford it. Right? Everyone who wants to go to medical schools should go to medical schools. Why I do what I do, right? I say, I want to make sure that every student who's passionate has the information, has the guidance, has the support they need to get into medical school. At the same time, right, I can't finance everyone's medical school tuition, so it would be great if all medical school tuition was covered. So let's say that. With that being said, I think that we have to be very careful about villainizing schools who aren't making tuition free, And it's because not everyone has an endowment. Not everyone has rich real estate people to donate $55 million, just write a check. 55, like imagine how wealthy you have to be to write a check for $55 million to a school. That's crazy. But anyway, not every school has those kind of resources, has those kind of access to finances. And so it can be problematic when we say every school should be doing this. You look at public schools, how are they going to raise that capital? So we have to really think about where this is coming from. And I think what we have to do, because I think oftentimes in life we blame the wrong person. There's a lot of blame that goes to medical schools for not making tuition cheaper. And yes, that's part of the problem. They should make it cheaper. But the other half of this coin is like healthcare. Yes, procedures and certain things in healthcare should be cheaper. But the bigger problem is that how do we pay for that resource? And that it would be great if the government offered us fair loans for education. The fact that a grad loan is 8% is ludicrous because you could never make, you know how hard it is to make 8% back on an investment? Yet the government's going to charge us 8% on our loans? That's ridiculous. Right? Everybody agree? 4%, 3%. How about 0%? All loans should be subsidized while we're in school. At least let us get through. Let us get there. Right? Wouldn't it be great if they allowed our loans to be subsidized through residency, knowing that we're broke as heck and we can't afford to live? Wouldn't that be awesome? So as we talk about all these things, I think it's always important if we're trying to make change, right? If you want to lobby for having more programs like this, the important thing to do is that we must understand where the real issues lie and where the changes can be made. And so I think we should really, really think about that. KX Cal just asked, why do people donate so much to schools? They donate because they love that school. Like, for example, Stanford is amazing. It's like I said, it's the best medical school in the country. If I had the money, I'd give them $55 million because they know what to do with money. They put it to work. They serve their students. It's very student-centric. And so people give back to the university because they have the means and they believe in what that university did for their career. That's what happens. And most want their name in the history on the school. They want the Arriaga Athletic Facility. Yep. Yeah, and so you know what's funny is Meher. I'm with you on this. So Meher's comment's actually very poignant. So he says, Dr. P, I make 300 above the FAP, which is the financial aid, and I forget what the P stands for, but it's essentially it's what you apply to for financial aid for the FAP cutoff. While my parents' income is under $10,000 a year, homeless, and live with me, but still AAMC says I don't qualify. Guess I'm not low income. LOL, it's wild. This is the other part of the discussion I had with this physician the other day. They were saying, well, Medicare, like we don't need universal health care. Everyone can afford Medicaid, right? Or Medi-Cal in California. And I was like, yeah, but to qualify for Medi-Cal, do you know how little you have to make? And they're like, oh, no, you just have to make, you have to be like low income. I'm like, no, no, no. You have to be like at federal poverty line numbers. Like, it's the same thing with this financial aid, which is really unfortunate, is they set the bar so low. Like, you have to make like peanuts on the dollar. Like, I myself, like I said, I come from a financially disadvantaged background. I couldn't believe that I didn't qualify for more financial aid. I'm like, how, guys? I'm like the brokest cat around here. How can I not qualify for more financial aid? And so I know it's tough. The thing to do is not to get frustrated by it. Whatever your financial needs are, right? Whatever you need to get done, you can get done. Spend the money, but spend it wisely on your education. Invest in yourself to make your future brighter, to have better income in the future. Does that make sense? And even if you're like me and you don't qualify for financial aid, Mike just asked the question, should we still consider Stanford if this financial aid will barely help us? You absolutely should, because it's the best medical school in the country for so many reasons. And I'll do an episode about why Stanford is the greatest medical school in the country. And it's not what you think, but it is just amazing. So you definitely should consider Stanford. And you should, as I say that, let me say one other thing. I'll get out of here. Can I leave? Are you guys enjoying this video? If you're liking this video right now, give me a like right now. Those of you who are on here with me, live action. If you're not on here with live action, watching this later, also give me a like. Let me know you're enjoying this video. what I'll say is I talk a lot of trash because I went to Stanford, right? I talk about how great Stanford is. With all that being said, we were actually talking about this in my Total Pre-Med Transformation coaching program. If you guys don't know, I have a coaching program for pre-meds. We meet every other week, and you get access to all my pre-med courses. It's on my website, studenttransformation.com. You can check that out. But we were having a discussion about the tiers of medical schools and if it matters if you go to a top tier, a middle tier, or a low tier. And what I'll say to you guys is what I say to my students. Is it great if you can get to a top tier medical school? Yes. But don't put the pressure on yourself to say, I have to get into a top tier medical school, and if I don't get into a top tier medical school, my life is over. Because it's not. Excellence is excellence. If you dominate, people will recognize your domination and will let you live the life you want to live. So if you are not able to get into a top tier medical school, don't ever let anyone make you feel bad about whatever school you go to. Don't ever let anyone make you feel bad about anything you do in your life. As long as you're giving your best, as long as you're performing at a high level, your career will work out for you. You will be successful. As I continue to say, and it's that time of year, I'm getting weepy-eyed because I'm having some students who are finishing their medical school careers, but I have students who are in DO schools. I have students who are in Caribbean schools. I have students who are in lower tier medical schools, and they're going on to get the residencies they want, to be in the specialty they want in competitive places, and it's because they didn't sulk about whatever their pathway was. They were fired up about it, and they worked hard and dominated. Right? Because what do we always say, right? How do we end these? Right? On this Dominate Pre-Med show? No excuses. Just dominate, guys. Whatever the obstacle, whatever the problem, you guys can overcome it. Whether it's financial, whether it's academic, you guys can overcome it, but you got to put that work in and dominate. So thank you guys very much for joining me. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Like I said, not only are we live on YouTube, but you can also catch the podcast on your favorite podcast platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, etc., etc. The Dominate Pre-Med Show, we are here. My website is studenttransformation.com. If you have a question, if you have a concern, get to my website, send me a voicemail. You can go on there and contact me, send me a voicemail, and I just may answer your question on one of these episodes. So thank you guys very much. Right? Everyone have a great day. No excuses. Just dominate. Later, guys. Today is the day, guys. No more excuses. No more complaining. You're going to take your future in your own hands. You're going to dominate. You're going to be successful. Get to my website, studenttransformation.com. I challenge you. What are you going to do today to make your life better?